Myanmar government has announced a series of reforms since President Thein Sein took office in March 2011. It has been almost 3 years now, and we started to see some changes taking place in the country. However, Myanmar Presidential Advisor on Economics recently told us that Myanmar is now in critical stage of economic reforms. What could he mean by being in critical stage? Find out in this special interview. Talking about economic development, economic reforms in Myanmar, in which state Myanmar is in right now in terms of economic reforms?
Well, I would say that we are at the very critical stage.
How would you describe critical?
Well, the critical because we are, first of all, we have the very strong leadership, especially the President Thein Sein, who is very committed to implement the reforms. At the same time, he also received support from popular leaders like Aung San Suu Kyi and also the 88 generation leaders and many other leaders within the country who are supporting his agenda for reform, which I think is a major requirement for our reform to succeed. So we already accomplished that. And then the next thing is, the first thing is the leadership. The next thing is about the strategy. And then the right kind of policies. And well, we are very fortunate that we receive all the helping hands from the institutions like IMF, World Bank, the ADB, as well as the many foreign governments who are willing to help us. And then also we got many talented opinion leaders. And then many of the Nobel laureates are also helping us because we also have one Nobel laureate, right?
Right.
So because of that, we also got the right kind of strategy and policy advice. Now it's very critical. The leaders there is a political will and a strong commitment from the leadership. We tend to have a very good strategy and very good policy framework. Now it's very critical that we implement them. So this is the hardest part.
Right, exactly.
It's about the implementation. I think now the country is trying to overcome the challenges of implementation. The main challenge is about the capacity. We don't have the capacity, adequate capacity to implement the reforms. And so we are trying to get that capacity so that our implementation should not take too long to generate results.
Do you think the implementation would be within the ruling of President Thein Sein? Because the election is coming up 2015. A year is not so far.
Yeah, 2 years from now.
2 years from now is not so far.
Yeah, not so far. So that's why he is also emphasizing that we produce the early and tangible results so that we'll have a good, stable foundation. Then we can have a very competitive elections. Unless we have a social stability, when we bring in the elections, sometimes it can create a lot of complications. So we are not only trying to resolve the social economic reforms, but also making the social economic reforms to be conducive for the democratic elections.
What are the key areas, the key priorities for President Thein Sein?
And he, as I said, we try to approach the whole agenda of reform in stages and strategies. The first stage he mentioned is we need to lay the foundations. So he used 4 pillars. One is the political reform. Second is the economic reform. Third is the public sector reform. We can call it governance reforms. And then the fourth is the private sector or the market reforms. And these are the 4 pillars that can build our foundations. And on top of that foundation, we have done 2 strategies. One is a short-term strategy and the second is a long-term strategy. Short-term strategy, now the president is outlining out of the short-term strategy, he will give 30 months immediate action plan. So under that action plan, we highlighted 7 areas: electricity, water, tourism, trade and investment, agriculture, jobs and industry, and the financial sector reforms. So these are the 7 areas that the government will emphasize its working in the next 30 months so that we can see the results very early.